Well, what is up, guys? We are streaming again tonight. Oh, buddy. Oh, buddy. I said I was going to stream every stream with a costume and holding true to my word. It's going to get a little hot tonight, though, that's for sure. Can you guys understand me? Or is it a little bit, like, funky? Oh, man. It's kind of hard to see in this, though. Alright, let's get set up. Getting all my files together. You guys can look at. Oh, where'd it go? There we go. Dude, this mic gets in the way all the time. I gotta find a better setup. Getting no audio from right now. Never mind, it's only on my end. Headphones are plugged. It's always been me, Aiden. I've always been here. Oh god, it's getting hard to see now. Whoa. Oh no! Did I go back too far? Shit. Oh no. Ha! I lied. We're still here. I think. Oh crap. Hopefully the stream is still working. I can't touch them. I can't see my flipping arrow. Okay, good. I can't really see too much, so hopefully that won't be a problem later on. Let me switch over to my other one. Did I show you my new Cintiq pen? This is the Monopoly Edition Cintiq pen. You use it to like really get those arm gesture movements. You gotta, and it has the M at the top to erase. You use this to erase too. Unfortunately, it does not erase debt. Do not collect gold. Do not pass gold. Do not collect $200. That's not fun though. It's not fun. I just have to like look out of one hole. I think that's like I have to look with one eye. I have to be like what's his name? Toby from Naruto. I have to use one eye to look. Can you see? Just one eye. It's my Mangekyo storyboard Ringan. Oh shit. Actually, it's a little bit easier with one eye. You know, it seems to be kind of like the theme for today, just like body horror. First it was like my crazy ass dream that woke me up, and then now it's just Monopoly Man. So that's always fun. Yeah, I heard about that. In California, they're shutting down pretty much all of the Bay Area except for San Francisco. So that's going to be kind of nuts, especially since it can last for like 5 or 6 days. I'm not quite sure what people are going to do, which is not so good, but that will be for you guys to figure out, I guess. You could always come down to LA where things will be on fire. God damn, my Cintiq pen is just having such a hard time drawing. Hold on, let me switch over to the other side so you guys can see what I'm talking about. Alright, so now let me show you the power of the Cintiq pen, the Monopoly Cintiq pen. Let me zoom in on this. Okay, here we go. Oh god, oh god, oh god, oh god. Oh god. Alright, here we go. Wait, switch over. There you go. Okay. Oh crap. Oh, I almost got it. Don't worry. We're gonna start off with some figure drawing. Holy shit, this is like hard. I'm doing it. You can't see, but I'm actually drawing with the cane. Just to let you guys know, it's really happening. Calm down. Everyone calm down. I'm just drawing. Okay. I need to take this apart. Set down. Alright. Yeah, pens are, this is the industry standard. If you can't draw with a cane with an M on the back of it, then you might be in a little bit of trouble. That was kind of the same opinion of people when they started using Cintiqs. They were like, these pens are too heavy. Well, this is, like Rock Lee. Do you guys know who Rock Lee is? Let me see if I can draw him. I totally forgot about that. Hold on. Let me get some Rock Lee going. So you know this guy? And how he has... Oh god. I can't draw straight. How he has weights on him. That's how your Cintiq pen should be. Like this, if I had to draw my Cintiq pen, it would look like this, right? And it has like that sleeve around it. So this is the pen. This is the sleeve. Right? You know what I'm talking about. Let me color it for you to make it very clear for everyone. That is my Cintiq pen, and when you take it off, you'll realize that underneath it is a real pen. Oh crap. Oh. So the normal Cintiq pen, if you guys didn't know, is $80, but the Naruto Rock Lee pen is 80 plus 80 kilos. It's for those real ballers. Okay, I think it's close to 7:52. I'm gonna get some of my champagne, and then I'll be back, and then we'll start. Yeah, don't go anywhere. We'll be back in a second. And I'm wearing a full. Again, you guys can't tell, but I'm definitely wearing the full getup. I can't see either. Are we in here? Hello, hello. Oh, I need to find one more. Okay. Well, I'm glad today is just a day of horror. Straight up, like, Halloween horror in terms of what's happening. I scared, well, Lynn scared me because she was just, like, hanging out in the living room and I didn't see her. And then she saw the mask and thought the mask was terrifying, so that, you know, yeah. I do want to play Monopoly in this at some point because I think that'd be fun. Oh shit! Just to be like, ah, money. It's definitely the spooky hour. Maybe later. Oh, maybe on Friday's stream we'll talk about ghost stories. I have a lot of ghost stories growing up, which is always fun. Dude, I can't draw. I can't even see when I draw. It's kind of hard actually. It wouldn't be so bad if the mask wasn't so short. Like, it's just a little bit shorter than I would want it to be. So like, you can see my lip coming through. Like, it's just a little bit hard to talk. You can kind of see the bottom of my lip when I talk. See this thing right here? That's the bottom lip, and it's really hard. But if I move it up, then I can't see. Like, you can't see my eyeballs. So I have to like kind of like look down ish, and then to the side just to see through. But hey, that's what you gotta do. That's what you gotta do. If you guys have any work, upload it to the folder. Let me see if I can pull up the link right now. Because I think there's only 2 things in there, which is fine. And they're not even storyboard stuff, but if you guys have stuff you want reviewed storyboard wise or looked at storyboard wise, let me get the link. Okay. There's a link to the storyboard folder. No. I'm not gonna cut bigger eye holes. This mask was given to me by the World Championship Monopoly player. He sacrificed his life to give it to me. So I can't tarnish his memory with that, unfortunately. Okay, what time is it? 8 o'clock. Okay, it's 8 o'clock. Welcome back, guys. Another Dwoo minute tip. We're gonna start right now, and let's start off with a joke as always. So let me see if I can find my joke book. I like I said, I can't see so well. Okay, so lunch lines. Let me see if I can find a Halloween one. Okay. I think we did that one last time, which was good because it was for Halloween. Oh, okay. Here. Look at my eye. Here we go. What does a ghost use to fly in the sky? What does a ghost use to fly in the sky? They use. What does a ghost use to fly in the sky? They use a scare plane. A scare plane. Oh, it's so good. It's so good. Scare plane. Tell that to all your friends when they hand out chocolates. I'm going to take this off right now because it's a little bit hot and it's hurting my lip. And also because I think people are truly afraid of the mask. So, all right, what's up, guys? We're back again for another stream. Tonight we're going to be covering more about technical drawing and figure drawing stuff, in terms of poses and whatnot. When I looked through the folder recently for uploads and whatnot, there wasn't anything concerning storyboards. So there are 2 things by Tahir that he uploaded or she uploaded, and we'll go through that. But if you guys have stuff that you want, it was me all along. If you want me to draw over, please upload that. Especially if it concerns like poses and stuff. It doesn't have to be technically good or anything you think. It can be rough stuff, and we can just clean up things together. And we can do that and I can talk about my thought process. I can talk about what directors are looking for, talk about everything that kind of goes into like the more technical side of drawing. So if you have stuff you want to upload, I copied and pasted the link to the chat, so find it there. But in the meantime, we'll start with Tahir's stuff. So Tahiri Brown uploaded 2 drawings, one of figure drawing stuff and then one of kind of like more of an illustration, and both of them are really nice. I think we'll start with the figure drawing stuff and we'll talk about that. So when I do, recently I've had a little bit more time to do figure drawing and figure drawing studies, and that's really nice because I think it helps me really get back into drawing and understanding line language and shapes and form. And I think the steps that I learned in figure drawing was kind of all over the place. I think in college the teacher was a good teacher. He was Mr. William Pupa at LMU, and he was trained in kind of like the old Renaissance academy style, where they're like, you have to learn the form, you have to learn all the muscles. And he was actually a really good figure drawing teacher because he would talk to us about, I went to LMU because he would talk about the muscles and would explain to you like how they moved and could draw them for you. That being said, I think I didn't understand it at the time. Like, nothing against him, it was just I was too dumb to understand it. And when I would figure draw, I would just try and be copying poses. Like, I would look at something and I would just try to copy it a lot of times. Let me see if I can pull up some like figure drawing stuff. Figure drawing. Figure draw. So I usually just type in Google figure drawing and I go to this first one, line of action. There are a couple of websites that actually have drawing sessions. If you are underage or haven't done figure drawing, I'm going to let you know straight ahead of time that there's going to be nudity on the stream because I can't control what shows up. So if you're under 18 or whatever, you're afraid, just, turn away. Or you know what? I'll just, this is going to be tough. You know what? Just don't look at the stream. I'm going to switch over to my other one. There you go. I'm just going to draw off screen. I'm going to have the model off screen and I'll just draw. So when I look at something, this is actually fine. Here, let me just screen cap it. Whoa, Caleb, you're a junior at LMU? Tell Mr. Poopa I say what up. I don't think he remembers me, but if he does, tell him, give him a big thumbs up from me and tell him thank you, because he actually did teach me quite a bit, and I would sit in on his classes to kind of learn more and whatnot. So here's what the pose looks like, right? When I was in school, I would just kind of try to draw what I saw. Like, I'd just be like, oh, there's this line and then this line and then that line and the back and then that, and then try to kind of basically do the outline, which isn't very smart because you're just copying and you're not learning construction, right? I'm basically just trying to copy the pose, and copying is fine because it teaches you how things look, like really look, and you kind of have to use your eye, your observation eye to make it happen. But what we're doing, storyboarding, requires something a little bit more than just observation. If you're just to do like life drawing and make fine art and just things that don't require a whole lot of imagination in terms of figure construction, then this would be fine, right? But we're not in that business. We're in the business of making things. We're in the business of creating things. So when I went to a different class, this is a different style that I was taught. It was the Kevin Chen style, where you kind of do the same thing on the outside, but you're thinking about things more in a construction manner. You think about it like that, and then you think about how he has a very like sharp style, basically. And the idea behind like this more angular style is that you're kind of just trying to get the broad strokes in, and eventually you'll turn them, right? So this is kind of like the general idea, and then you start adding things in here that give it form, things that like overlap. You start to add curves to the muscles where you find them, like that. You add things that overlap like that. And so this was another good way for me to kind of like transition from one style to the next, right? The first style being just copying outlines, and then this one actually trying to understand the interior of things. But even this has its limitations because you need to understand the muscles, right? You need to understand how everything connects together. So at that point, I started doing more studies on my own and also going to Kirk's figure drawing class. And Kirk was really good because Kirk would teach the construction. He wouldn't just teach you like how to draw. He would actually teach you how to think about things properly. And if you get a chance, definitely find Kirk Shinmoto or at the Robots on Instagram, and I think on Twitter and wherever's. He has a figure drawing class, and I would highly suggest it because I think he's very, very good at teaching figure drawing. He's been doing it for a long time. He teaches at Art Center, CDA, Brainstorm. He taught at LAFA. He does a lot of figure drawing, and I think he's gotten a very good system down for how to think about things. And so seeing him draw and talk about how to draw things helped kind of like put all those pieces together, because you know how the teachers always like draw a box and stuff, and you kind of just listen to what they say, like, oh, I'm drawing a box for the rib cage, and that's it. Like, you kind of don't, or at least I didn't really understand the purpose of the box, right? Like, it's just a box, and then you draw another box, and somehow you're tasked with like actually figuring out how to form the body around it somehow, right? They don't tell you like the landmarks and why this box works and how to use the box. Well, Kirk does that. He teaches you like how to turn it, how to see things and whatnot. And so that will help you actually, understanding construction will actually help you draw and create your own poses, right? It'll help you create poses when you have to do storyboarding or whatnot. So I don't really want to go into a ton of technical aspects of figure drawing because I think that will be, it's a huge topic, and I think I'll get lost in the weeds because that is how it happens. What I will stick with is just talking about like my process of practicing figure drawing, how I go from there. So when I look at something like this, it's usually only for 30 seconds, and it's kind of for me to warm up. And what I'm looking for is kind of the gesture right now, seeing the arm going one way in the back and whatnot. And so it's the first half of it just like warming up, trying to get the understanding how it turns and twists and feeling how the forms overlap. Like, I'm not trying to go for a good drawing at this point yet. I'm just trying to kind of get my head into that space of making things feel 3D. Like, you want to get your head space into a 3D position and kind of start thinking about things spatially and how things work together and whatnot, right? So I do that for a little bit, and I try to draw the whole figure, but I'm really slow all the time and whatnot. And the other thing I tend to look for during all of this is I look for the middle lines, right? I look for, let me see if I can pull up a different color. I look for this center line. Oh, that was not a different color. I look for this center line, usually. This center line here, right? His back. And then I also look at this and then see how much of this side is to the other side, right? Like, I want to see how much of it is turning. I want to see like how much it actually turns. Same thing with the butt. Like, the butt is here, and there's these two marks for the back of the butt here. And these are good guidelines. You can kind of see it right here. These are good guidelines for how to line up the pelvis, right? Because these two marks are here are the back of the pelvis bone, your tailbone basically. Whoop. This is from the back view, right? From the side view, it kind of looks like that, and this is a tailbone, like that. So this is a good marker here, and I try to like keep in mind both the center line and this stuff, so I can figure out how much of this box we're looking at, right? You want to know how much of this box is turning. Same thing with this. You want to see how much the box is turning on this one as well. And the hard thing when you start off with figure drawing is trying to understand what is bone and what is muscle. I think that's the hardest part about figure drawing, is trying to figure out what parts of what you're looking at is bone and what parts are muscle. Because right now, the rib cage right here underneath this is kind of being covered up by a ton of muscle. There's a muscle, there's a bone here actually, the scapula, scapula here, and then the rest of it are muscles. Like this is a muscle, that's a muscle. So all these weird bumps and stuff, you have to like kind of start to understand what is muscle and what's bone. Once you can identify the two, that's when things become infinitely easier. Then you're like, oh shit, that is a muscle, that is a bone, so I know this muscle goes on top of that, this muscle goes here, I know that this is a muscle, so this must be this, and this is it. So once you can identify the bones and the muscles, that's when things start to get like really easy, or at least that's what I think. So I'm kind of all over the place already because figure drawing is so expensive. Okay, tip 1, study the body. Oh, why is it everything capital? Ah, I know why. Oh, why are you not turning off? All right, study. Oh my goodness, study. Stop. Study the body. Identify what is bone and what is muscle, right? That would be my first tip. Identify what's bone and what's muscle. And what will really help is if you're doing figure drawing, bring in an anatomy book with you. I think we have talked about this before. Bring in an anatomy book, choose one part of the body to study, either for the session or for a week, and then just focus on that when you do figure drawing studies. Study, use an anatomy book, focus on one body part. So to go back, I'm reading the chat. Tahiri says, so is the second step of adding curves on the gesture outline still about copying outline, sort of? I get really tripped up figuring out how I'm supposed to think when I draw. Class just feels so different, like Proko's lessons versus Alex Wu's on Schoolism. Kevin Mobox says booty night. Swear I'm really interested in shorthands for storyboarding. Yes, and Monopoly also. Booty drawing everywhere. Lots of, Tahiri says, sorry, I meant lots of lessons just vary a lot in focuses and methods. Yes, that's the other hard thing about figure drawing, is that everyone has a very different method of approaching it. For storyboarding, I would say the two things you want to focus on. For storyboarding, you want to focus on construction and poses. Good poses, like silhouetting poses and stuff, right? So construction is about knowing how to build a body in any shape from any angle. And that is what you should try to get out of figure drawing. If you want to do figure drawing, understand how to construct things, so that understand how the body is constructed so you can construct things in your storyboards. You're not necessarily trying to make a perfect drawing. You're trying to make a drawing that looks realistic or looks believable. Maybe not realistic, but at least believable. And then once you kind of get that down, then you want to look for good poses and good like silhouettes. And that's kind of more the gestural side of things, where teachers are like, you know, make it feel the line, find that like through line through the body and all that stuff, where it's like, woo, like this goes through the body like that. And yeah, that's true to some extent. And you know, you have all these like lines and stuff like that, and that's good. This is, you want to feel like that energy, and this will help you later on when you start to do poses, because some poses read better than others, and it can kind of help you get away with some stuff and whatnot. But I think and this is what I'm talking about, is mostly action storyboarding related. It's not really, it doesn't apply to comedy stuff as well, especially not like Cartoon Network type shows where it's very stylized. Right, so it's like, oh, the energy. You feel the dynamic opposing lines of the body, and like that's good. That's good to know. Except, you know, at some point you actually have to make it look like a body. So understanding both is important. Okay, so knowing that, when I look at figure drawing and stuff like this, right? If it's very loose, like I tend to think that they're going for gestural. If it's a little bit tighter, then I know that they're kind of like studying for like anatomy and whatnot. And I think when you do these studies, choose one or the other, right? Choose either you're going to do gestural stuff and go like really gestural with it and really capture the flow of things, right? Really capture the body movement and the head and whatnot, and you know, really do gestural drawings. Or if you're going to do a study in terms of like how things connect, then really try to finish out the drawing, right? Try to get those muscles working together. And like I said, because you're practicing for construction, feel free to like wrap things, right? Like feel free to add in through lines and whatnot. Like draw out the rib cage, draw out the muscles as you do them. It's not, I think people get hung up sometimes on making a good drawing when your focus should be more on, am I understanding this correctly? Is this making sense to me, right? Like really figure out these things. So I know from just practice that this butt is going to be up like that because it pinches a little bit more with the meat. It's going to come down like that. There's a line here for that muscle on the outside, but it also dips down like that. And then you think about the leg like that. You might see the back of it. The muscle splits up like that, right? So like really, and you can, like I said, you can draw through these things, like work on really turning the form and understanding the form as a thing. Right, so you want to kind of separate those two ideas. Either do it very gestural and try to like really understand the energy of the opposing lines, right? Like all the ideas are like straights versus curves. So this would be like a straight and then curve, right? Straight, curve. Straight and then curve, right? The whole idea of like straights versus curves, complex versus simple, like that is kind of the gestural idea behind all of these things. Curvy, straight, and then opposing lines, opposing S's that kind of match with each other and whatnot. But I think this one is an interesting pose. I actually don't know. Right, something like that. Right, so you have these principles of curve, straight, curve, straight, curve, straight. Oops. Maybe like that or something. Right, so as you can see, it's not as detailed as the other one, but the idea behind this is more gestural, right? So you use these two principles in tandem. You study one way and then study one way and the other. And over time, you'll start to understand why the gesture matches that, or you'll start to understand why the muscles look that way from your gesture drawings. Like depending on how you approach figure drawing, one will inform the other. I came from more analytical side, and then I started informing my gestural stuff, and then the gesture stuff, I was like, oh, this makes sense why they have this flow here and that flow here. Yes, design wise, it looks better, but also because the body starts to look like that. Like muscles start to like go into each other in a certain way. They start to like wrap around and go through things and whatnot and like stuff like that. There's a, let me see if I can pull it up. There was a, I got this a long time ago from the internet somewhere. It was on Tumblr and it was basically reference for a figure drawing. And it was kind of the more Japanese style of figure drawing. Hold on. And what it was, I think you can still find it on Tumblr somewhere. Okay. And so this was kind of how they think about figure drawing. Let me see if I can find the page that has it. Nope. Whoa, SFW. Okay, so like with the arm here, they construct the arm with it like wrapping around things, right? They show it flow into each other in a different way. Let me see if I can find some other stuff. There was a really good one, really good drawing. Where is it? Oh, here. Okay, so the idea that they use is they always have like the muscles wrapping around each other. Where is it? Here, they're talking about gesture here. They're talking about like posing and stuff. Damn, where'd it go? Oh, look, Hunter x Hunter. Hold on, let me just look for it. Is this it? I don't know who owns this because I found it so long ago, and so I am worried about giving it to you guys, because if this is someone's that they pay for, because I know there is a Twitter, the manga artist one, and I subscribe to that, and they have a bunch of tutorials, but I don't, he gets upset if you share it with people, so I don't know if this is that person's stuff, because this was also a long time ago before he started a Patreon, before Patreon even existed. I had found this somewhere. Oh shit, I wish I had the, damn it, where'd it go? But basically they wrap things around the body. So like if you have an arm muscle like this, right, like that, their idea is that the muscles are all connected, and they have this gesture to them where it goes like that, right? So this is one side and it comes out the other and wraps around that way, and then the other one is it goes like this, following the bicep, right? The bicep would be here and then curves around that side and then comes out on this side over here. And so it's a different way to think about anatomy, where it's two different opposing ideas and things where they wrap around each other, and that gives you that gestural look to things. So when you turn the arm up like this, the idea still applies. It's just now you have it going like this. Shit, is it like that? Oh, it goes like this, like that way, and then the other one goes around that way. It's a whole different way to think about it. So right, but the idea behind that is that it just teaches you different ways to think about construction and the way to draw, and having as many inputs is always good. Yeah, sorry, I'm really sorry I can't Dropbox this to you. I'm just search Tumblr figure drawing, and I'm sure it'll pop up somewhere. Let me see if I can even do that right now. Tumblr figure drawing tutorial. Manga tutorial. So this is basically what I typed into Google, Tumblr manga tutorial and stuff. Tumblr figure drawing tutorial. Is this it? Nope. But like I said, there are a ton of references online that you can refer to. Yeah, like they're all over the place. It didn't take me very long to find it the last time. Tell me if you draw Japanese. Anime figure drawing tutorial. Anime figure drawing Tumblr. Maybe not. Long story short, you can find a ton of reference everywhere. Anyways, we're getting off topic. So looking at these right now, I think what I would say is try to do one or the other. It looks like you're doing both at the same time with these drawings, and that's fine. But I think if you want to improve your skills, focus on one or the other. Like focus on either understanding the anatomy a little bit better and figure out like how it works. Figure out how these things kind of work together, because I feel like if it was like that, this should be up a little bit higher, this should be a little bit lower. The other thing that I see a lot of times that I think is a bad habit is drawing hands as like just circles or not finishing your hands and feet. I think a lot of people kind of cheat drawing them properly, and yeah, it sucks having to go in and actually draw them. Even I will kind of like cheat it a lot of times, but I think it is something to do. It's a good habit to get into and like kind of understand how they work, because hands you'll probably be drawing, other than faces, you'll be drawing hands just as much, and it's important to draw them well in storyboarding. And it doesn't take that much practice. If you do it consistently, you'll get a hang of it really quickly, and then you'll find a shorthand. Get a shorthand. Right, so really take your time and understand like how these muscles work. Right, understand that this line here is actually the bone that comes down and then kind of leads into the foot like that. Another thing that helped me a lot when I was practicing figure drawing was actually looking at myself in the mirror. I'm not saying I'm like buff or anything. I'm just saying it helped me understand like how certain muscles connected to each other. It helped me understand how things look when they squish, especially like with a forearm and like bicep. Like I'd squish my arm in front of the mirror just to see what the fleshiness of it would look like. Okay, so like practice doing that, and then if you want to do gestural stuff, then practice gestural stuff afterwards, but choose one or the other. Don't try not to do both at the same time when you're starting out, because you want to get good really quickly. You gotta like focus. Right. Okay, so when you start getting a hang of construction stuff, then try doing it. Try looking at the poses and then turning away and trying to draw the rest of it. Like look at it for a couple seconds, then draw. Look at it, and then draw, right? And see if you can kind of construct it from your memory and see how that matches up. And don't worry if you're not perfect after like the first week of doing this, because this is like years and years of practice. And I think what separates people from being good at figure drawing and what separates people from bad at figure drawing is actually just the mileage. It just takes a long time to actually get good, because there's so many things you have to keep in mind when you do it. There's so much that you can talk about, that you can teach, but at the end of the day, you just have to do it. That head's too big. Yeah, see, you can just tell the head's too big already. I messed that up. Anyways, Tahiri says, hold on, I missed some stuff. Whoa, I dropped out of the stream for a second, but yeah, I'll let Poopa know next time I see him. He's the best. I'm always excited to see someone from LME out there succeeding a lot. Yeah, Poopa's good. I would recommend talking to him and asking him for help. Also, the animation teachers are great. Rob, Tom. I don't know if Mark is still there, but and Jay Lee was there. Minmay says, when you shift to different poses like a to B pose in storyboarding, how do you maintain the volume of the figure so it looks accurate? Booty Butts by Paperbox House. Lots of them. Kirk's. Kevin says Kirk's gesture class is great for gesture if you can get into the CDA class. Yeah. Tahiri says that makes a lot of sense. So try to stay away from curves when doing mechanization. Get the hand. It's not staying away from curves. It's understanding why certain curves are put down, right? Like, so gesture is not bad. Like, this is a good gesture pose. Like, I can really feel it, right? Like, I can feel that there's this energy going through here, and that's very important when you try to convey action and when you convey like character in a drawing. Like, this stuff is good. There's nothing wrong with doing that. It's having to then take these gestures and figure out how to make it work in a drawing, because if you were to do storyboards and just turn like a gesture drawing in like this for someone, it wouldn't really fly. Like, maybe on some shows they'd be okay with it, but I think a lot of them would ask you actually to like, hey man, can you like finish the drawing and, you know, add in more muscle, because this might have been good in the 90s with like Batman the Animated Series, but I feel like a lot of shows now are a lot more complicated. Think about like Young Justice, Korra, Voltron, even, well, Troll Hunters had a little bit of anatomy. It was more just tube anatomy, so it wasn't that bad, but even then, understanding how like things work. 3D shows is not so much, but 2D ones, you'll definitely need it. And even though characters like She-Ra and maybe even more cartoony ones like DuckTales, they're pretty cartoony, but there's still a lot of anatomy to them. There's still a lot of like wrapping. There's still a lot of understanding how like forms overlap and how arms overlap. Even if you have a skinny arm, you can still show muscle in it. You can show the bicep, and it kind of gives you that gestural shape that you need. Now again, you're gonna have to draw hands all the time, so getting used to drawing hands is important. But going back to your question about like curves and stuff, it's understanding what curves to put and where to put them that will make the difference, because you can still do a gestural drawing like this. See, like, it's just adding a little bit more that will really sell it. Like, boom. Right, so like the gesture helps you give you that energy, and then the anatomy helps you to draw the figure. The gesture gives you the energy, the anatomy gives you the detail that gives it life. I think a good person to study for gesture and anatomy is Glenn Keane. Glenn Keane's very, very good at just simplifying it down to what matters. His Tarzan stuff, his like Tangled, and all his drawings are just very, very clean, but they have so much anatomy and they're so smooth at the same time, right? So it's just like a little bit more. Yeah, it's just to give you a little bit more understanding of the body when you do anatomy, because later on, so staying away from curves is not what I was trying to get at. It's just that you have to understand how they match up, because later on we have to like draw someone punching, right? Like, what does a pose look like just before he's about to punch someone? You have to construct in your mind. You have to understand why certain curves go in some places, why you have a straight somewhere. See, it's that whole straight versus curves thing now. think this head could be a little bit lower actually. Oh, the head's really big now. Anyways, okay, so that's the idea, because you want to learn how to construct later on. The whole point of all this gesture and anatomy stuff is so you can construct poses however you want. You can construct the body doing whatever you need to do. From any angle. The goal is to do it from any angle and to make it look believable. Okay. Hey, Kevin says, any advice for essay portion for the CNS Academy application coming up? I know most of us are probably submitting in the chat. I don't know what is in the application. Post the questions and maybe I'll try to answer it. Agent Penguin says, what are your favorite anatomy books? Kylie says, oh, especially the Tarzan art book. He really shows off how to study and understand anatomy in that one. Yeah, if you have it, I would definitely suggest it. If you just like type in Google, oh shit. If you just type in Google Tarzan anatomy or Tarzan Glen Keane, you'll see like a ton of it already. Like, I think we had talked about this before, just like the gesture, but there's also a lot of anatomy. Like this is very gestural, but then this stuff is all anatomy over here. This is understanding anatomy. Like that doesn't look like a Glen Keane drawing. This is a Glen Keane drawing. Really, really good stuff. Just, man, that's so good. This stuff is just so good. I just feel, you can feel the energy, and you can also feel like the overlapping forms. You can feel the feeling it. Let me see if I can find some of my anatomy books. I picked up this book recently based off of someone else's advice. It's called Anatomy for the Sculptors, and it's pretty good. It's good for kind of understanding how things, let me see if I can change it over. I think we need that. It's called Anatomy for Sculptors by Otis Zarians. It's not bad because it gives you the 3D models, and then it also breaks down, like it draws over the body. See, you can see it draw over the body here with the muscles, right? So this can help you understand what is like bone and what's muscle. Stuff like this, where it helps you kind of understand how the body is turning, how the muscles work in tandem with the bones and stuff like that. So it's good for studying anatomy, right? It's good for understanding how things overlap on top of each other, how the body can break down. But there's also other books that can do that I think are equally as good. The Andrew Loomis book, Figure Drawing for All It's Worth, is like a real banger. It's a very classic one, and this one kind of gives you more of the basics in a very old school style. Like it tells you, it'll give you everything you need to learn how to draw, basically. Like it will tell you everything. And the nice thing about this one compared to the other one is that it's actually in 2D drawing, so you kind of can just study how he interprets 3D things, right? Half of the battle of drawing, figure drawing, is kind of the line language too, understanding how to convey certain things compared to what is actually you're seeing, because drawing is taking a 3D object and make it 2D, but still convincing people it's 3D. So this is a good book for that. Again, another good book, and I think a lot of people have this one, is like Figure Drawing Designs by Michael Hampton. And again, this one is kind of like a combination of both the first book I showed you, where it has 3D drawings and stuff, or it has like a lot of 3D drawings that shows you how the muscles work, but they're 2D instead of 3D. So these books are very good to have as you draw in anatomy class and figure drawing class, because you can go to turn. What I'll do is, let's say I'm studying the forearm, right? I'm studying the forearm while I'm doing figure drawing. And so what I'll do is I'll draw a little bit. I'll be like, draw. And then I'll look at my book and be like, oh, what muscle is that? Why did I draw it that way, right? Or how do I draw what I'm seeing right now? So it's good to have a book with you, because you can understand how the muscles are working as you do the pose. Like this pose happens a lot where someone is having one arm raised up, and if you didn't know that the chest muscle goes under your shoulder muscle here, it tucks in here. If you didn't know that, you would just think that the chest just lies flat on it. And I think a lot of people just draw it lying flat, but it actually tucks in under the muscle, and that will help you give that like that gesture. It helps you like overlap things, and it helps you make sense of how it's on top of the rib cage, how it connects to your shoulder parts, all these things that will be important later on. And that's why having one of these books and looking at while you're doing it is really important. So I'm wearing a tux because tonight is the Monopoly Man. You weren't here earlier, but I was drawing with the Monopoly Man mask and the Monopoly Man, oh god, Cintiq, the Monopoly Man Cintiq pen. If you want to get really good, you have to hold it like this. This teaches you this will teach you how to draw. It'll make you care less about your line quality and more about what you're doing in life. Like, why am I drawing like this? Oh yeah, look at, oh yeah, give me that gesture. Oh wait, you guys can't see this? Hold on. You guys actually couldn't see me drawing with it, but you know, maybe that's a good thing. All right, yeah. Here, let me show you again how this works. Oh yeah, oh yeah. Oh, look at that gesture. Look at that butt. Oh yeah. Add in that kneecap. Oh yeah. Man, this is straight fire. Dude, this is not a bad idea for gesture. Anyways, so that, getting back to your thing about figure drawing books, those are the ones I have. I have a ton of other reference I'll use. Like I said, just go on Tumblr, type in like figure drawing reference. I'll look at other people's work that I think is good. Like I'll study, like I said, Glenn Keane or like Shiun, and then there's a lot of anime books I'll study. Like, oh, I didn't plan for this. So like this book, the Groundworks books are really good too. The Groundworks books are really good too, because you can see the shorthand for them when they draw things. Or not the shorthand, you can see how they simplify body parts and see how they connect from pose to pose. And we'll talk about that next. Ah, shit. Surprisingly, there's not a whole lot of people drawing in here. At least not people acting. It's too exaggerated. Hold on, let me get my other book. This one's too exaggerated. All right, good old Gurren Lagann Groundworks book. Let me find. Let me find a non-NSFW one. All right, so like this pose I used kind of for like understanding how to draw things in foreshortening a little bit. It's kind of a stylized version, but you kind of understand how artists are interpreting the same thing, right? You kind of understand. It's just you don't have to copy them exactly, but you're using it as a way to understand how other people draw human bodies. Like here's Shimon running, right? Like you're trying to understand how do people convey running, because a lot of times we have it in our mind that's drawn one way, but actually there's a lot of character that you can do in running. There's a lot of things that you can understand about how to draw people like running, like what is foreshortened, like how much of his chest do you actually see, how much of his arm do you actually see, what parts of his arm do you see in the run, like things like that. Like look at his face in this drawing here, right? You don't actually see too much of his mouth. You see a lot of his eyes and you see a lot of his top of his head, but you don't really see a whole lot of his mouth. Same thing with like his legs, like how are they foreshortened and how are the feet foreshortened. So these books are very good because one, you can see how they pose things, and then two, you can also kind of like see how bodies look in motion, because when you figure draw, a lot of times you'll see all of the body and you only see it from the side. But storyboarding, you have to draw them from like running toward camera, you have to show up shots, down shots, so you'll start to see angles you've never seen before, and it makes you think about like, oh, is this what that looks like from that angle? Like how many times in figure drawing do you get like someone punching directly toward camera? Like how do you draw this? I didn't know how to draw like a fist coming directly toward camera for a long time, because you don't get that in figure drawing, right? You don't do that, so you have to study other things. Like in anime they draw the fist like this, where one knuckle is kind of like stuck out and then it curls in, and in this book they have that. Look at that. That's the fist I was talking about. But you won't see that in figure drawing. You have to study other things. You have to like look around for stuff. You have to understand that there are other ways to draw things. You have to understand how it breaks down. All this. This book is so good too. These books are. I wish they made more of the Groundworks books, because there's a lot of good stuff in there. Okay. Yeah, my hand actually hurts a little bit now using the pen. Rosie M says, we need a whole video of David sharing his book collection. I've thought about that. And I've thought about doing it with Arthur and Kirk, because what you see back here is maybe like 1/8 of what Arthur and Kirk have individually. Like Arthur has 2 of those shelves stacked up and then some. Kirk has 2 of those shelves and then more stacked up. So it's not, one day we could just do that. Maybe we'll do that like on Friday. Maybe on Friday, maybe someday, because it's just out in the library over there, and there's a ton of books. Kevin says they have really thick FLCL storyboard books. It's literally one book for 2 episodes, I think, or it's the rougher thumbnails that I love looking at for shorthand. Yeah, I have that one too. That one's really good. There's this one. This is the one you're talking about, and you can, at the start of the book, it's really tight. Like the drawings are really nice and tight. Hold on, they're really nice and tight. But as the episodes go along, they get rougher and rougher, just because I think they get tired. But this is, so these are good. These storyboard books are good because they help you understand shot choice a lot better. This is something I studied to understand shot choice. You see, when you can see the drawings like this, like in a line, you can kind of see the different silhouettes that they're making. So this is like an explosion, and then it cuts to this shot, right? So you can easily go back and forth between these 2 drawings and kind of understand like what is the difference in composition. Why did they go from this shot to this shot? Same thing with like same thing like this, right? Like between this shot and then this shot, they almost make a jump cut, but they don't. And this is another good way to check to see if your storyboards are like jumping around, is by putting them next to each other or by flipping them really quickly. Right? Like, yeah, there's a lot of stuff in here that you can take away. FLCL might not be the best thing to study just because it's so stylized, but it's a good way to start understanding how to draw figures. It's a good way to understand camera choices and camera shots, because they do cheat things and they do make things very exciting that aren't necessarily exciting, like people sitting down. Yeah, Kevin says FLCL has some very unique establishing shots too. What a great series. One of the stories that I like to, one of the books that I like is the Summer Wars one. It's another storyboard book. The thing I like about this is a little bit more normal, less stylized, and you still get the shots and you still get a lot of the, it's a little bit rougher, but you still get a good sense of his shorthand. Here, this is a good shorthand for his people. Right? Like, it's very, he stages people very well between shots. You look, these 3 shots are all different. This one, and this one. And they all have groups of people, and they're very thick, as we say. Like, there's a lot of, there's this one, they're kind of like arranged in a line going backwards. This one is centered and focusing on the grandma with people in the foreground. And then this one's kind of similarly, but even more with people like around them. So these are good books for, especially the Summer Wars and the Girl Who Left Through Time are really good books to study shot composition and how to do shot to shot. Minmay says, I think you forgot to answer my question before. When you shift to different poses like A to B poses, how do you maintain the volume of the figure so it looks accurate? Okay, yeah, thank you for getting us back to that. So let us see if, does anyone have any storyboards that they upload to the drive? Oh, people did actually. Because I don't want to just make up a pose. Oh, people did more. Wait. Oh, that's me. Ha! That was my stuff. So Kenny uploaded some stuff to the drive. Let me download it right now. We'll do 2 different ones. Download this one. Download that one. Yeah, I'm not sure what to get back to the other question about CNS, the Cartoon Network Studios apprenticeship program. I don't know what they have in it, because when I was doing it, they didn't have that program. Okay, so these were 2 drawings that Kenny submitted, and the first one we'll start with is the guy running here. So to answer your question about how do you maintain like volume, you need to first, how do you maintain volume between shots? You kind of need to think about things volumetrically first. I always think about things in terms of like this top part in that box that we're talking about, right? And then if we can see through this, the bottom part. I tend to think about things like this, like this. And those are, because those are the 2 main masses of the body, they don't twist very much apart from each other. They don't bend. Even if you bend the body, it doesn't like bend completely in half. It still maintains its shape for the most part. Like, I think the most you can kind of bend is like that, right? Like, it doesn't go very far. Both like bending that way with your legs, and then also like twisting. I think you can do like maybe 45 degrees at the most. So using that as kind of like your, where you work off from is important. So this is the middle line, right? So I tend to think about things in the general shape first, big shapes first, and then smaller. So that, and then, so if this is kind of like the pose that we're going with for this guy, right? Between this pose and the next pose, I put the arm down here like that. right? So this is the guy running. Let me make it more that way. Right? This is kind of the idea with the guy running here. What I will then do for the next pose, so if this is a pose 1, you know what, we can just take that out. Let's draw on the ground plane and then we'll take it away. Ground plane. So the thing about running is that your arms switch places, right? So, or they're alternating. So if you have your right arm up, your left leg is going to be forward. If you have your left arm up, your right leg is going to be forward, and your body twists one way. Your body's twisting this way with the upper part, and then the pelvis is twisting the other way. So you need to have that like opposing idea. So in the next pose, even though he's running, again, it would be like the reverse, right? Like that. So then the top part changes like that. Like I tend to draw things with these lines first to indicate the top half of the box where it's turning. Right. The thing you have to watch out for with these poses, because we're looking at it from an angle. Oh shit. Sorry guys. Haha! I was totally on the wrong screen. Okay. Sorry. So this is the pose, right? This is the guy running. I drew over it really quickly, like that. And what I'll tend to do is I'll focus on the box. I'll focus on the rib cage. We'll go over this all over again. We'll do it all over again because I'm a dummy. So when I start off with a drawing, I tend to think about the rib cage first, right? The main masses, so the body, rib cage like this. I tend to think about if it's tilting down or tilting up. Same thing with the box down here. Like I try to think about like, is the pelvis tilting down? How much is it tilting down? Which way is it angled? And which way is it faced? So the rib cage is kind of faced that way. The pelvis is kind of faced this way. And I choose those because the pelvis and the rib cage don't really move around too much. Like even if you're sitting down and you're bending over, it doesn't go much more than like something like this, right? Like it doesn't, this is your rib cage and your pelvis, like it can't bend too much. The rest of it is just legs and limbs. Same thing with twisting. If your body is twisted, the body doesn't twist very much, right? Like it can only twist so much, and it's not going to twist more than like maybe a 45-degree angle. So these are good. This is like a good thing to start off with, is your main masses, because they're your biggest ones that won't move as much. So I tend to start off my drawings with like a center line and like the general shape of the body, right? The torso and the pelvis. And then from there, I'll think about like how the arms are working, connecting off of this. So the arms and shoulders connect to, well, they don't connect to the rib cage, but I use the rib cage as a landmark for everything else. So like the clavicle, and from that it connects to the shoulder. And we talked about the chest muscle going underneath like that. So you know, I pull back like that. You know, the great trochanter sticks out the side of the box. And you know, it comes out to here with the knee. And the great trochanter goes back down like that. Knee, leg, shoot, right? And then we'll turn his head that way. What I'll do is I'll draw the center line first, and then I'll add on the rest of the head so I know how far it needs to go or what it's going to look like. I think a lot of people just draw the head willy-nilly, and that's not necessarily the best, because the head is never usually in the same spot, and there's a lot of nuance to how it looks. Nuance to like how much it's turned, how much you see of it. right? So I have that. I have the drawing basically, right, of the guy running. It's on the ground plane. Right, so I have that. And what I'll do from that is I'll think about the pose that comes next, right? When you run, if you have your right arm up, your left leg is going to be forward. If you have your left arm up, your right leg is going to be forward. Everything kind of works in opposing action or opposing energy. Opposing, I don't know how to describe it. It's opposing. They're always like, if you go left, it goes right. See, even here, like if it goes down that way, the other one goes up. This is back, this one's forward. Everything has an opposite, and it's to kind of keep your balance and whatnot. So I'll start again with the main body shape and try to think about like what that's going to look like, right? So now the leg comes forward like that. And this is kind of where your gesture stuff comes in, where you're like, oh, gesturally it looks like this, it feels like that, right? You know that this overlaps like that because it twists that way, it twists backwards. Right, and the head might turn a little bit more sideways just because the chest is turned a little bit more sideways, so it gives you a little bit more range. Ugh. I think it actually might be more. Right, so now we have this guy running. And then I can just clean it up more if I want to later on. I probably would if it was a storyboard. Right, so that's kind of how I approach going from pose to pose. I think about the big shapes and then I work off of that. It applies to kind of everything. Like even, let's say someone kicking. Let's go back. So this is where anatomy comes in handy because you kind of need to know how these things connect up. I know the scapula can come, I know the clavicle goes that way. I know if we turn the head down like that. Right, and I'll draw like that belt line for the leg, for the waist, and start the hip bone, the pelvis. That arm is too long. All right, so it's kind of like my shorthand, just getting the broad strokes down. So that's pose one. If I want to get a little fancy, I would add in like some stuff like that. You can already kind of see this stuff here. And all this like blurry stuff is stuff I learned from reading those, looking at those groundworks books, basically. Just right, so that's pose one. Lower down. And then for this one, you kind of have to think about where the line of action is. Because if I were to just draw his leg out like this in this pose, it wouldn't make sense, right? It wouldn't look good as a pose. You have to think about like the motion and the energy and stuff. So his center of gravity is going to switch, is going to lean this way more. It's going to lean off of this foot, like when he kicks, right? His body's going to twist away that way. He's twisting his upper body first to swing around his leg. And because of that twisting motion and because of the leg having mass, he has to lean to the side to compensate for it. Right? And if you ever have any like idea like how to draw things, like just do the motion and like pay attention to your body. As simple as that sounds, that's kind of all you have to do, is right? Like you have to. Right, so again, you think about the mass of the rib cage. You have to think about like how much of it is turning. And I don't think the center line is correct. I just kind of drew it there as a placeholder, but you have to kind of adjust for that. I think it's turned more than that. I think it's like that. It's getting confusing with all these lines. I think it's more like this. Right? All these extra lines make it confusing. And then this is where studying anatomy comes in, because if you study anatomy, you'll know that the pelvis bone is like this, and then kind of comes out like that. And your socket comes out like that. That's why you have that bump there, because your pelvis is there, and then there's meat around it for your bone. There's a muscle that goes like that. But you can also kind of cheat it too. You just like. The foot will typically turn when you kick a little bit. It'll have a little bit of a turn to it. That. So the difference between the running pose and the kicking pose is that the motion. You have to think about the motion of the energy. And to maintain that form, you have to think about things three-dimensionally. You have to think about the large parts of the body, like the rib cage and the pelvis, and then you have to think about how that moves in space. Does that answer your question? Tip 2. Tips for poses. Think about large body. Think about large body mass first. Rib cage, pelvis. Think about motion of body. Right? These are the two things that you kind of have to keep in mind when you're doing poses and when you're trying to go from A pose to B pose. Kevin says, butt is the most dense part of the body. Yeah, you gotta learn how to draw butt. The funny thing about superhero shows is that you have to draw a lot of naked people, surprisingly. It's all people in tights, so you have to learn how to draw that gluteus maximus for Batman. Right? All the superhero shows are just naked people, basically. Call me Batman. Call me the Batman. Woo. So that's kind of like how I think about things, and what will really help you is just studying anatomy, trying to construct things on your own, and then practicing constructing, looking at anime books, like I said, looking at animation, frame by frame animation, to see how they do things, see how the masses turn. It's like you have to approach the project, you have to approach the problem from 3 different angles, or if not more than 3 different angles, to kind of like start understanding it. And the big thing about all this is you actually have to do the drawing. You actually have to spend time drawing and drawing and drawing and drawing, because that's the only way it'll stick in your head. Again, like I said, it's taken me a long time to get to this place, and it's just because of practice and study and practice and study. So for more stylized characters like this, where let's say he's like conducting a little bit more, again, you keep the same idea in mind. You look for the big shapes. So I would assume his biggest shapes are kind of like this ribcage shape, and then the booty, right? His head and arms are kind of like whatevers. So if I were to kind of move him around, I'd want to keep those shapes kind of in the same general size and proportion. Like come up a little bit more. Maybe I'll have him point instead. He's pointing at the trombones. Play your music. And this is kind of where more gesturalness of things will help you, when it's a little bit less anatomy. When the anatomy is more exaggerated, I mean. There's still anatomy and still a shape to this, but you are now relying more on gesture. And the thing that I hadn't talked about up until this point is posing and silhouettes, right? So this is a nice silhouette because his arm's up here. You want to include also another good silhouette by having it be easily readable. Boom. You don't want, and by silhouette, I mean like when you shade in this character, you want to be able to easily tell what his pose is doing. You don't want too many poses where the character's acting, unless you want it to be, is just one giant mass. Usually when it's like one giant mass, they're usually introspective or sad or something, but you want very broad poses to read. So you can easily tell what is being conveyed. One thing I did when I first started animation was I'd get the character sheets for these characters. Like let's say we'll take the skeleton guy, and I'd draw over them. I would try to figure out the general proportions of the character, and then try to start turn them on my own before I started to draw them, because you would start to kind of like understand their language, their shape language. Because eventually you'll have to move these characters around, so you want to get a kind of a good grasp of their size and meatiness. Maybe he's a boxing conductor. Right. The other thing I didn't talk about is what you'll come to learn is drawing clothes is kind of difficult. It's a whole nother set of problems, but when you get there, I'm sure you'll all be very capable of breaking it down and understanding how that works. I feel like the body is much more difficult, but just be warned that close drawing is also important, and you'll have to learn it at some point, right? So you just want to be able to keep the masses in your head. You want to be able to like see them and turn them, know how to like mold them and spin them in your head, and that just comes with practice and doing it. Practice and doing it. Seeing these things in your head. And if you have a hard time, then just draw it out. Just work out the drawing. Like sit down and actually like think about it, then do it. Think about it, then do it. And if you're having a really hard time, then draw a box around it, right? Draw a square. Here's the guy's chest, basically, from the front. Then this is the center line, right? Now try to draw that square from a different angle. Right? So you're doing that. You're basically constructing something in your mind. Construction. Right? Even from the most extreme angles, you should be able to do it, because it's just a box. It's literally just a box. You can do that. Everyone can draw a box. If everyone can draw a box, then everyone can draw a body. Right? So it's like that. Now make it more challenging. Add in dimensionality to it, right? Like let's give it some dimensionality now. We can still do the center line like we had before, but now think about rounding those forms off a little bit more. Right. Min-May says, are clear silhouettes also important for action adventure shows too? The character action seems to be more subtle. It is important. Like with the kicking stuff, good silhouettes are important. I could have easily drawn this incorrectly by having chose like the wrong pose for like that, or like having the arms in too tight like that. It might be natural to have your arms in closer like this or whatever, but it just doesn't look good. So you kind of have to exaggerate things a little bit more, right? It doesn't read as much. It doesn't read as well. Choosing the right poses is also important. You know, you want the ones with the most impact, the most energy. So usually they'll be when they're most extended outward, then they're extended to their maximum. I don't know what that would look like actually. Try that gluteus. Get that gluteus in there. He's line dancing. I think that's incorrect, to be honest, but if I have a really hard time with the drawing, then I'll just like lead with the gesture. I'm like, oh, this feels right. And then I'll try to make the muscles conform to that. I think the head's too much. Right, like right now I don't really understand how the body works when it kicks like this. And I probably should, you know, go look at some reference of people kicking things to see what the follow through looks like. But you know what? I'm not going to do that right now. I'm going to show you the power of anatomy. Ah! You've not even seen my final format. That looks so wrong. But yeah. Yeah, that looks so wrong. I think it's because he would have like kicking that hard. I think he would have like gone through. Like you would have been kind of turned around at that point. Oh no, it would have stopped. It wouldn't have gone all the way. It would have just been like that. It would have kicked and then like hit a pose. But the getting back to what I was talking about earlier, Muay Thai kick, about turning things. It's if you can turn a box, then you can kind of turn anything. You just, if you want to get like really technical, then you just draw out where it hits the box. You draw out where these shapes hit it, and then you just make sure you stick to it. Right, so you kind of get the idea. See you, Kevin. Have a good night. What was it, 10 or? Oh, it's 9:24. So yeah, that is how you go about kind of doing pose to pose, kind of how you understand turning things, silhouettes, anatomy. Do you guys have more questions about anything? Yeah, just going back to these, keep in mind your masses. Hands, oh man. Hands are very technical because they are like squarish and also not squarish at the same time. So you have your palm, basically you're the top of your hand, and this part being a square, but there's, and your fingers stick off of it like this. Oops, not big enough, basically. Right? Oh man, I don't want to do hands because hands are so technical. So you have your hand, right? This is your hand. There's a wedge that sticks off of it that is your thumb, and this wedge on the side of your hand can go can tuck under like that. Just look at your own hand right now, right? So you have your hand, and that square part is this part right here, square part. But your thumb, if you think about it, is not even connected to that. It just like is an offshoot of it. And because of that, you can tuck your thumb underneath. You can put your thumb like this. Our opposable thumb can move from here to here. And this ability to kind of like fold in on itself is what allows us to be human. Your fingers, on the other hand, when they curl together, they kind of form like a ball. They don't go straight down like this, like, you know, that plastic can that you get at Halloween that's like a Terminator hand, they just go straight up and down. Your fingers don't do that. They actually curl inward. They curl like that. So when you grab things, it kind of like forms like a ball. Like if you were to grab something, your hand kind of like makes a ballish shape. And so I think the problem with a lot of times when people draw hands is that they draw it really stiff, because we're always taught to draw hands being stiff. We start with this. We start with that box thing, right? So when people draw a fist, they draw it like that, right? Box with thumb. I drew a fist like that. I draw a fist like this, right? Because that's how we're kind of taught how to do it. Everything's square and solid. That's one way to draw it, but there's a lot more subtlety to hands than just that. There's, when you draw, like, let's take an example for this fist. Like I was saying, our hands don't just make a square, they actually fold in on it. And then if you think about your knuckles and everything, this front knuckle sticks out more than this one and this one and this one. It kind of like goes away from you, it goes like that. It has like this weird planar turn away, so you have to kind of indicate that when you're drawing, right? Like it turns away from, they kind of turn away and go down. Same thing with the thumb. it kind of bends around like that, right? Like I said, it tucks in under this, but your thumb goes like that. So the hand is super, super complicated, and it's because it's partly structured and partly meaty. When your hand is just like that, it's very easy to draw, but as soon as you start like curling around, pieces of like flesh kind of bubble up or like tuck in, and so it's, you have to know which parts are bone, which parts are not bone, and you have to just study hands. Studying hands is just a whole thing in itself. Understanding how the finger works, because the top of the finger is pretty flat for the most part, but when you kind of curl it in on itself, you'll have a little bit of meat popping up, and a little meat here, a little meat here. So when you draw hands, typically with fingers stuck out, it's usually flat. Like this is kind of like the anime type finger, right? Flat on the top, curved on the bottom. That's how Disney draws it. They always draw it like that. But when you tuck it in now, when you tuck it in, you're going to have the knuckle pop out. You have a little bit more bubbliness on the top and on the sides like this, because the flesh of your finger has to go somewhere. It doesn't just magically disappear, right? It actually bubbles up a little bit. And so you that's kind of like the whole part of studying how to draw fingers and hands, is that you kind of just have to see it in action and then draw it. But the nice thing about hands is you can just use one hand like this and then just draw it. Draw it, draw it. Kylie says, I forget who taught me, but for characters that have only 3 fingers and a thumb, the artists just leave out the ring finger. Oh, that's weird. You get the most readability by leaving in the others versus the ring finger in those situations. Huh. Minmay says, I also see animators group the ring finger with the middle finger or pinky. Yeah, I think this was a pretty common pose for comics for some reason, is when people are like signaling something, they'll leave the pinky out here. Oh, the thing you need to know is that your arm will always kind of like match up with your if your arm is straight for the most part, it will always match up with your index finger. So this line here goes like that. It goes through your index finger. Your forearm connects through your index finger like that. Even pointing this way, it connects through your index finger. Hand, right? That tendon that runs along the back of your hand from your index finger goes into your forearm, and that's a good way to make sure your hand is always posed semi-correctly. The wrist is another complicated thing. I'm not going to go into that because I don't have the vocabulary or the proper way to teach it, so I would not trust me. All right, but this line here is what I'm talking about. It always kind of goes into your arm. Your index finger always kind of like matches your forearm. But talking about hands and how comic people used to pose them, they always used to pose them like, for some reason this is like a very popular pose, is having like the 3rd finger and 4th finger connected for some reason. It might be because it just looks better than drawing the whole hand splayed out, but you don't really see that. You don't really see this specific pose in real life very often, so it kind of stands out a little bit, right? Like American comics do that a lot. They'll have those 2 fingers connected for some reason. Another tip about the hand and the wrist is that you don't usually have it connect straight in like this all the time. The wrist is actually kind of pops out on the right side. On the pinky side, you have the bone that pops out like that, right? On this side, it kind of goes in. It goes into the hand. Just look at your own hand. There's like that little. If you put your arm out, you put your hand out like this, you can see that your bone goes like right in there, or there's like that little gap there. It goes like that. Same thing with the wrist. It kind of like pops out on that side a little bit more. Again, I don't have the language for this, so I'm just going off of how I learned how to draw it, just observation wise, right? It goes like that. It pops out on this side more. What else do you guys want me to talk about? I feel like we're kind of all over tonight just because there wasn't a whole lot of stuff to work off of, I guess. If you guys have any I should have saved some storyboards from last time, but let me see. Nope, I deleted all of them. Okay, yeah. Well, if you guys don't have any more questions, we can always end early. It's 9:30, or we can talk about something else. Drawing a character consistently, that's just practice and understanding forms again. So once you, let's say you get down a pretty let's say you get your figure drawing down pretty well. You have like a generic size and shape of a person, right? So let's say you're like, yeah, I'm pretty good at drawing a normal human, and then all of a sudden they're like, okay, you have to draw the Blob from Marvel. Have you got, or maybe not the Blob, well, I'm trying to think of, let's say Bubbles from Lilo and Stitch, right? So this guy, right, you have a pretty good idea of how the body works, and now you have to draw this guy. And so you have to take all those lessons you applied to drawing this normal looking guy and apply it to Bubbles, who is like a lot bigger here, but you still apply those same lessons of anatomy, you just have to keep in mind your training, the training that you did up until this point of drawing things like that. You have to keep this in mind as you draw this, and that's the trick to it. And you have to go back and forth between what you know and what you're trying to draw. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be semi-believable, right? It doesn't have to be exactly perfect. It just needs to get close. And again, if you have a hard time doing this and applying it to this, then just take it back to the basics. Just take it back to the box. Just draw the box and use all those box lessons that we talked about to help you construct the figure, and then add the in-between stuff. Add the other bones that lay on top of it, and other muscles and how they overlap, right? It's just, if something's hard, find a simpler way. If that's hard, then find a simpler way and simpler. And you just kind of reduce it down until you understand the first concept, and then you build on top of that, understand that, and then build on top of that. Aiden says expressions. Expressions is, you just have to kind of like understand. First, you have to understand how the head works, how to draw the head, how to construct it, right? How to construct a head, and then understanding that the eyebrows and the eyes are the windows into all your emotions. And using this, you don't even need a nose most of the time. It's just eyes, eyebrows, and mouth will convey all your emotions that you need. The nose can't convey emotions, but you need to draw it in anyways. In terms of certain expressions, you just have to, there are like expression sheets online, but it's important just to study it and study yourself. If you don't know what to do, then get a mirror. A mirror usually helps a lot of times for that. Or just film yourself with a phone. But understanding, like, I think understanding how to construct the head will help you a lot more than anything.
or at least it'll help you turn things better. Expressions are pretty easy because even if the head doesn't look correct, you can still kind of get away with stuff. Oh, you know, that guy is surprised. You know, that guy is kind of like, I think it's because emojis are really good because it breaks it down to the most simplest form, and yet somehow we're still able to read that this is like disappointment. Hey, that's not bad. Like, okay, that's not bad. This is like, are you sure? Like, so expressions are pretty easy because you can dumb them down so much and it still reads. It's understanding, like, especially for action adventure, it's understanding how the muscles in the face work. It's understanding like how to turn an eyeball. I think a lot of people tend to draw eyes just like that, but in fact the eyeball just like that, but the eyeball is much more complicated. It's like that. There's like that meatiness on top, the eyebrow, and so it's kind of, again, just more studying it from the side, understanding that it looks more like that. Studying it from like the bottom, how to draw it from the bottom. And I think there's a lot of resources for all of this online. It's just doing it. I realized after a while that taking classes wasn't helpful for me because I would hear the information, I'd be like, oh yeah, I know that array, why can't I do it? And I realized it's just because I didn't draw it. I wasn't practicing enough. I wasn't taking time to actually study and sit down why my drawings were wrong. And it's not just like doodling, it's like actually like sitting there and like trying to draw it right. If it's not right, then going back over it. Like I'll do this, like I'm like, oh, it doesn't look quite right, so I'd go back over it again. I'm like, is this right? Does this look right? And then I would look at reference and try to draw it again. I'm like, is this what an eye looks like? Do I need that line up there? Does it make him look sleepy? Right? Like, it's just practice. It's practice, conscious practice of doing things over and over and over. And it kind of sucks, but you kind of have to do it. You know the 10,000 hour rule that's in Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell? How you have to put in 10,000 hours of conscious practice to actually become good. You kind of need to do that for drawing. And conscious practice is like 5 years worth of like studying and practicing and getting good. And I feel like that's pretty true. I feel like if you take anything seriously and do it for a year at least, like really seriously study things for a year, you'll see yourself improve like leaps and bounds. That first year is always easiest. The second year, you start to make less progress. The third year, you make less progress. And it's because you've gotten better. It's those first year where you feel like you made the biggest jump, but sticking with it after that first year is important. And just making it to the first year is also important. Right? So like, if you understand this stuff, then drawing anime eyes is a lot easier because you realize that they just do the same thing. Like the top part and the bottom part are just the bottom part, top part and bottom part of the eye. And this whole thing here is basically the iris extended, and they just add in more shading stuff on it. But it turns exactly the same way. That's why they draw it like this from the side, right? Because it's this, it's that, it's this thing right here. It's this thing right here, but just stretched out now. You can start to turn the anime eye in any way you want because you realize it's just a stretched out eye, and it just like kind of shapes more to the eye socket than anything. And so like, especially drawing from the side like this, where the head's kind of like 3/4 but off to the side, just think about the eye socket. What does the eye socket do? Looks kind of like that. Right, it might stick out a little bit. You might have a little bit of eyelash coming out over the side, but these curves are a lot shorter like that. Okay, what does the chat say? Kenny says, lots of my friends dealt with rejection today. How do you deal with rejection? We'll come back to that at the end, because I feel like that's a big role. Observing life helps me, says Kenny. Kylie says, yeah, but I find that sometimes they really do just make the most unique and natural poses. Like I went through a lot of Jessica's work the other day and she rarely uses the same pose twice. I guess if I went out a lot more, I could have a lot more library. Yeah, I find that same problem too. Like I'll tend to use the same poses over and over. And so it's studying from real life will help you. I've started to practice freeze framing like people dancing, and I realize there's a lot more subtlety to people's movements and to how they look. The only thing hard with that is that sometimes you get the in-between movements of people moving, so you have like these weird shapes that don't really have a whole lot of energy. Like they're just like kind of like weird amorphous like people in between things. Obviously they're not jelloing, but they just don't have like good silhouettes, and so that's kind of a problem. But it does teach you subtlety a little bit, and it kind of teaches you like, if you kind of pay attention to it, like, oh, how to make this pose stronger, or see what poses they hit and why that looks at so good as a dancing move. I think dancing and kind of like stage theater are really good because they teach you how to use your body to convey things without using words. They teach you, if you watch musicals or any type of theatrical work, they always have to like over gesture, like, because the people in the back can't see their expressions, right? You can't see people's faces like you can in movies. So the people on stage have to make these broad gestures of like emotion that read to people far, far away. Think about it like also in like Roman times when they didn't have microphones or sound systems. The people in the back couldn't even hear at that point. So the whole acting thing and like poses and gesturing, people like, oh, like vaudevillian thing had to play because they couldn't hear. You had to see it through their acting. So dancing, theater, poses, all that stuff, all of it like ties back in, studying life, yada, 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 yada. Alex says, drawing smears, yes or no? I draw smears for when I storyboard. If I'm studying something, I'm not going to draw smears. All right, let's talk about rejection. I'm not 100% sure what type of rejection your friends are facing, but let's get a little bit closer. Let's get a little bit closer. So, I think rejection is important because it allows you to take stock of what you're doing, right? Let's say, for example, you submit a storyboard portfolio test and they reject you. This is the point where you can decide, am I doing the right thing or am I not doing it? Should I continue doing this or should I choose something else? Like, and be, take some time with it. Don't make decisions irrationally all the time, or don't do it when you're emotional. Anytime I have a big decision, I'll usually spend a night or 2 nights to sit on it and think about it and then not. So in terms of storyboard, it's like, did I make a portfolio that is easy for them to see? Is it easy for them to download? Is my work easily presented in a way that if someone were to just click on it and didn't know anything about it, they would know what I do, who I am, and how I get in contact with me, right? So you ask yourself those questions. Then you ask yourself like, okay, I did all those things. What about, okay, so if they were able to get to my website, if they're able to see my work, does that mean my work is not good enough, right? So then you go to your work and you think like, you look at it and you're like, okay, what can I improve upon? And you think to yourself like, maybe I want to fix this one drawing and then this one drawing. Saying things like, I want to fix it and make it good doesn't help. You have to set very concrete goals. You have to be like, I'm going to spend this week fixing these 5 shots. I want to make sure that they look good. I want to make sure the shot choice makes sense. Or not say I want it to look good. I want the drawings to be clean and have turns, they like turn in space and feel good in terms of like readability, in terms of, and by good I mean like good silhouettes, gesture, they turn well, the poses read, and they also want to make sure that the shot choice. And so you have to set very definitive goals. Emotionally, as you take rejection, I think you have to just see it not as a negative. You have to be honest with yourself first. Be like, okay, I got rejected. Not get angry that you got rejected. Just be like, okay, that is what happened. And then you have to start mentally seeing it as an opportunity. All my best lessons were when I failed, because it forced me to think about what I need to improve, right? I've told this story before about how when I was a revisionist, I did really badly and I almost got fired. Had that not happened and had the directors just been nice and be like, okay, whatever's, I probably would not have worked as hard as I did that first year. And I probably would not have gotten a job, my second job, because I would have still been shitty. I would not have learned the lesson that I was bad early on. There are some storyboard artists that I know that you tell them how to improve and they don't improve because they don't like that rejection. They just see it as like, well, that person is wrong and I'm right. And so they don't reflect upon themselves about how to improve. They're just like, well, I don't care. I don't care that. They let their emotions guide them, right? You have to like separate the two. You have to separate your emotions from like what your actual abilities are. It's fine to be like upset and to be sad and whatever. That's fine. That's totally normal. That's totally okay. That happens to me too. But when that fades away, you have to actually look at what people are trying to tell you, and you have to kind of gauge that in your own self and be like, are they right? What perspective are they coming from? Are they trying to help me, or are they just trying to be malicious? And at that point, that's when you can see clearly how to fix things. You can take stock of what you've done and how to improve upon it. So failing and getting rejected is good if you don't let it bring you down, if you use it as an opportunity to improve. I know a lot of storyboard tests, when you submit it, you don't really hear back from them. If you are able to, or if you're somehow able to get in contact with someone, ask them for feedback on why you didn't do well, or, you know, try to show it to other people and see what they say, and show it to people that you trust, show it to people that you respect their opinion, and then tell them, be honest, like be very honest with me, like about my work. Does it suck? What can I improve? Like, what is working? You know, knowing what is wrong is important, is just as important as knowing what is good and what's working right now. So, and I think that is the best way to improve, is looking at your failures, looking at your rejection and taking it very seriously, and then not letting it keep you down. Does that make sense? I think doing things that are hard and failing are very important because it teaches you about yourself. Like running a marathon, I was like 40 pounds overweight before I'd run the marathon, and just training for it over a year taught me a lot of self-discipline. It taught me a lot about like failing, and taught me a lot about like what motivates me as a person. It taught me like what to kind of like it mentally toughened me as much as it physically toughened me. It mentally taught me like, oh, you can work through things a lot harder than you thought you could. You can endure more pain than you thought you could. And it showed me that I can do things that seem ridiculous. Like when you go hiking, this is a metaphor I always like to use. When you go hiking, you start at the bottom of the mountain, but by the end of it, you're at the top of it. And no one ever looks at a mountain saying, I'm going to climb that mountain. But somehow over the course of like an hour or 2 hours, just one step after another, you end up at the top, and it can be thousands of feet above where you started from. And if we think about like buildings as 10 feet for every story, a 30,000 or like a 3,000 foot mountain is like 300 stories. No one ever said, oh, I'm going to climb to the top of a 300 story building. And yet we do it. We hike all the time. People climb super high mountains and shit. And it's just one step after another. And you have to you know, stick with it. You have to, just because you can't always mentally, you have to mentally do it first before you physically can do it. You have to like get in your head and like kind of figure out your path, and you have to know that the path is going to be tough, and like figure out how you can stay true to that path while also not being bummed out. It's tough. It's not easy. But everyone fails. All the people that I admire failed a lot and just move forward from there. Every story I hear about people succeeding always starts with someone failing. It always, everyone who's good at anything has failed first. There's no one who is the best at what they do without failing. That's just, it's a fact. If you want to be the best at something, you have to fail. It's 9:55. Do you guys have any more questions? Did that help with your question about rejection? It sounds kind of tough, but that's kind of how I think about failure. I don't see it as such a negative thing as so much as a learning opportunity. I think the hardest part is when you have like multiple failures in a row or multiple rejections in a row, because you start to question whether or not what you're doing is right. And so at those points, what I would suggest doing is going back to your first thing and looking at the progress you've made, right? Looking at the difference between like the first storyboard you submitted and the 5th one. You also need to keep track of like your progression. And if you see yourself progressing, like getting better from your first to your 5th one, that's good. If you don't see yourself progressing, then that is also good, because then you can take stock of like, well, I need to fix these things, right? I need to work on these things, and these things aren't improving. So it's good to look back at your work. It's good to like reflect. Self-reflection is very important. Like reflecting on your work is very important. And so when you have multiple rejections, look back and think about how you can improve. Look back and think about how far you've come, and that'll give you like the momentum to push on further. Yeah, Caleb says, I'm trying to fail faster, as they say. Yeah, it's the other thing that I was taught by listening to like all these people that I admire and like hear about is that they're not afraid of failing. They never fear losing, right? As long as you come away understanding something and learning from the experience, then you haven't failed. Yeah, you might not have achieved what you want, but at least you got that extra step, so you can take another step forward, and then another step forward, and another step forward, like when you climb up the mountain. When you just succeed the whole time, you don't know what is good. You don't know what's working and what's not working. So failing is never a bad thing. It's just how you view it. It's how you view your response to it. Do you guys play fighting games like Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat or any type of competitive game? There's a YouTuber that I like to follow, and his name is Sajam, and he commentates video games, but he also plays a lot of video games too as well, right? And I really like Sajam because he talks about how to get better. He plays so many different video games that he's kind of learned a way to improve at things. Even Smash, it can work for Smash Brothers too. So this is Sajam's YouTube channel, and he talks mostly about fighting video games and random stuff. But every once in a while, there will be a nice little YouTube like tutorial or like how to get better. See, Sajam talks the secret benefits to losing a bunch. He talks about how he like lost a lot of weight and was basically cutting out soda and just being mindful. Improve. Let's see. Improve. How to learn improving as a player, right? And these lessons apply to everything. He talks about like when you play video games, a lot of people just want to win first, right? It's not about, if you want to get good, it's not about the winning. You focus on one aspect of the game first. So Smash Brothers, for example, is, you know, you have to learn how to dodge and block first, right? Those are two things you should focus on first: running around and how to block and how to like avoid getting hit. You don't focus on learning smash attacks. You don't focus on like optimal combos at the edge or edge guarding. You just focus on one part. And if you can do that one part well, then you go on to the next part and the next part. And you might lose a ton of games at the start, but if you can build those foundation blocks to improving your gameplay, eventually you'll start winning. And you won't be winning because of like chance. You'll know why you're winning and how you can improve. And so he talks about that in terms of like commentary. He talks about in terms of video games and a lot of different ways. He talks about like how to just think about learning. Another good book. Oh, this is a great book. Where is it? Where is it? There you go. Okay, this book, I got the recommendation from watching Day 9 stream. It's called The Art of Learning by Josh Waitzkin. Josh Waitzkin is the kid that the movie Finding Bobby Fischer is based off of. He was basically a child prodigy when it came to chess. He just like felt it in him. But he went on to also become like a Tai Chi push hands master. He's gone on to be like a black belt jiu-jitsu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu. He's done a ton. He's gotten to be the best at many different fields that are not related to chess at all. And he talks about like how he thinks about learning, and he talks about how to improve, right? It's not, he won't give you like the exact like you need to do this and this and this. He talks more about like the mental aspect of like how to approach problems and how to think about solving them. And it's a good book because it's entertaining for one. Like I read through it pretty quickly because he talks about his experiences as a chess player, but he also talks about what he did mentally to get better and what he felt and like how he dealt with his emotions and all these things that just made him a better learner. So I definitely suggest picking this up because I think it's a good way, at least for me, it was a good way to inspire me to get better at learning. I think learning how to learn is something that's never taught in school, but it's a very important skill to learn how to fail, to learn how to like improve, to learn how to just like deal emotionally with what you're doing. G2X says, what do you do if you feel stuck at getting in? Do you mean getting into animation? Or do you mean getting stuck in a rut when you're learning or some other stuck? Close up bubbles. (1008) Dualman stream episode 26. An animation career. Feel stuck at getting in animation. So you mean like breaking into the industry? I think breaking in is two parts. One is technical, like how technically skilled you are in terms of I think it's two parts. I think getting to the animation industry is two parts. One is technical skill. Can you draw and storyboard? And then the other one is who you know. Who you know, right? Right place, right time. And so, but to be honest, the first one is much more important than the second one. If you can do the job well, there will always be someone that needs someone, right? You might not be at the right place or right time, but if you keep knocking on those doors, keep sending your work, and you can do the work and do it well, eventually you'll get your opportunity. Opportunity is preparation meets luck, right? Preparation plus luck equals opportunity, right? So you need to have the skills, and then you just need to be right place, right time. And then that's your chance. So it's, in terms of like right place, right time, who you know, it's going to like, it's going and taking classes like at CDA. It's like going to Gallery Nucleus when they have opening, because a lot of times animation people will be there. It's like going to guild workshops and checking the guild page and checking the websites and seeing who has positions open. It's reaching out to people. It's a lot of like hustling, which in this day and age is kind of, everyone's doing it, but you kind of have to keep doing it too. At least it's a lot easier than when I was doing it, because when I was breaking in, the internet was not really used for portfolios. You still had to like print out and hand in your portfolio to people. You had to get in contact with people via like phone calls, or like, not even, people didn't really use email that much. They did, but it wasn't super prevalent. There was definitely no Twitter, no Instagram, no, like, even blogs weren't a thing when I was breaking. So you couldn't just be like, oh, check out my blog, here's my work. It was like, no, you have to like search out people. Now you can kind of like hit people up all the time, and that's like a good or bad thing, because you know some people don't like being contacted that way. But at least now it's there are a lot more avenues to getting into the industry. You can send them an email, you can post your work on Instagram, you can check the websites, you can check the guild page. There's so many more ways to get the information. It's just having to do that work now. Yeah, it's, again, it's just right place, right time. And you know, I think that's a lot of people, is they just, myself included, is I was just like, oh shoot, I didn't, here's what I was talking about. Yeah, right play, technical skill, can you draw, who you know, and it's preparation plus luck equals opportunity. Skills, right place, right time is your chance. And when you get that first job, work hard. Don't get taken advantage of in terms of like them working you to death, but definitely do a good job. Do a good job. Lamont Agicom says, how come recruiters don't usually have art experience? It's because recruiting people is a whole nother skill set. And so it's a different skill set. It's like a managerial skill set versus artistic skill set. People who, how do I put this? It's the difference between a sports player and a coach, right? Like maybe the coach was a sports player at some point, or maybe he's just like someone that never achieved that high level of caliber, but they understand the game and they understand their players, right? And that's what makes a good coach, understanding the people and understanding their skill set, versus a player who's just very good at being a sports player. Not all good players make good coaches. Not all coaches make good players. You need different skill sets for the recruiting. For being a recruiter, you need to know what to look for, and you need to also understand the person as a person. Because just because someone can draw very well doesn't always make them good for your team. You want to have people that will work well together. Animation is such a team sport or a team thing that you need to have everyone mesh together. If there are superstars on your team that don't play nice, or if you have people that are just mean, no one wants to work with them, and it just like really blows up the production and makes it terrible for everyone, and people don't do worse work, people waste money, waste time. It's really hard to do with those people. So being nice and being a team player, as best as I can say it, is really important to the job as well. And that's what recruiters are there for. They're there to pick out these people, to make sure that we have good people we can work with. We have nice people and people that can do the job. Does that answer you guys' questions about that? About getting in, about rejection, and about working. I wish I could just be like, here's a job for you, here's a job for you, and you and you and you and you, and then see what happens there. But I'm not in charge of any of that. I really, there's a whole lot of other people involved in the process of hiring. Even though it sounds like the director just like, I want that person and da 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 da. It doesn't. It's a long process. A lot of people have their hands in deciding who gets picked and who gets hired on and who doesn't. I really can't say specifically what it is because each production is different, each person is different, each team is different. And again, it's just right place, right time. Sometimes projects end before people are needed. Sometimes they've been looking for people for so long. It's a lot like life. It's just random. But if there are no more questions, it is 10:10. Oh, more questions. Lamont Adjicum says, when would someone hire a new person with little experience? Is potential even marketable in this age? So right now, animation is going through a boom time. There are a lot of jobs going on in animation, and there are a lot of studios looking for animators, right? This is the timeline of animation. This is the 90s. This is the 2000s. And then this is, whoa, it's the 2020s now, right? It's 1, 2. Feature animation was at the highest point in the 90s, like that, way up there, and then it came crashing down. It was like non-existent basically, and for a long time it was like at this level. There was some TV, but there was not a whole lot of animation compared to the 90s. 90s was high money and lots of jobs. Then it all came crashing down in the 2000s, the late 90s, when Treasure Planet failed, when all the studios closed down their 2D animation, and it was like that for a long time. Only TV animation was around, and there wasn't a whole lot going on, and they weren't getting paid very well. But then Netflix came along sometime around here, and slowly started creeping back up because of the streaming and whatnot, and streaming. And so we're because every studio needs more streaming stuff, and because there's more and more projects needed and more content to be made now than ever before, we're seeing a rise in jobs in animation, and we're seeing way more people in the guild than ever before. So a lot of studios are hiring new people, and it's a good time to try and break in because there's so many jobs. There's not enough people to fill them. My suggestion is make sure your work is good and reach out to people online. To reach out to, 1, be nice to them first, and then 2, ask them for advice. Talk to them, see what they have to say, and if they're willing, ask them to review your portfolio and tell them to be honest with you. Tell them to be very honest and tell them what is working and what's not working, and then try to fix that. And I think if you really want to prove yourself to someone, do the work and then show it to them again and be like, hey, do you mind if you look at this again? And I don't mean just like spend a week on it, I mean like really try to improve upon it. And then when you feel it's a good spot, then ask them to review it again. Be like, hey, what do you think about it now? Right? Like, I took what you said, I took notes down, I really tried to improve upon it. I took some classes, I think I have something to show now. And it might be slightly better. They might be like, well, you have a long way to go, but you're slowly building like credit with them, right? You're slowly building this mental credit where they're like, oh, this person works hard. They actually want this. And so when they hear about a job coming up and they're like, well, it's kind of like a new position, it's kind of looking for someone that has less experience. Well, maybe this person, right? Maybe it's this person that was talking to me online because they actually tried hard. When they weren't even getting paid, they put in the time to get better. So, now that we're looking for someone, you'd be like, hey, can you submit your stuff? And maybe you get that chance. You get that opportunity to prove that maybe you're not the best quite yet, but you have the drive to get better, right? You've shown yourself to have the willingness to improve and to listen. Those are two really big things when you're starting off. Is, do you listen? And do you take those notes and improve? These are like the two big things that people look for, even if they don't know it, when they're looking at people who are coming into the industry. Are they good at taking notes, and are they trying to improve? If you do these two things when you get in, or even when you're trying to break in, it goes a long way. It's like, it goes so much farther, because people will know that you actually care. You actually have skin in the game. You actually want to prove yourself. I think there are a lot of people that I run into that kind of listen, but they don't actually try to improve. They kind of go through the motions, but they don't actually like sit down and be like put in the hard work. And that's where these people kind of like fall out over time, or feel like they got passed up because they didn't actually take the time. You actually have to like put in the hard work. Kasim asked, tip on breaking in if you live outside of LA. Again, I think just reaching out to people online, it's so much easier to get in contact with people, and so much easier to submit your work. There are people who are coming from all over to get into LA, and they submit their work, and they have it reviewed, and I think it's a lot easier, like I said, to just have people look at your work than ever before. Again, being nice helps a lot. Being actually, personable and listening to the people you reach out to is important too. Don't just see them as like, maybe this is where my knowledge drops off, but I've never really reached out to someone through Twitter and being like, hey, can you help me out? But I have sent like cold emails to people being like, hey, my name is David Woo. This is what I'm doing. I'm hoping you can provide me with some advice, and then see what they say. I know you're busy. Thank you for your time, for reading my email. I hope to hear back from you. And then maybe they'll respond with something like, hey, David, da 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 da, yada yada yada. So you have to, you kind of have to be personable in your way of approaching them. I wouldn't just say like, hey, my name's David, I need help. Like, you kind of need to, do the song and dance a little bit. You need to massage your emails. You need to massage your messages so that they're professional, so that it shows that you care, and shows that you're willing to listen and you appreciate their time. G2 Alex says, does storyboarding original story or storyboards based on a show look better? That's tough for recruiters. That's really tough because it depends on the show, depends on what you're doing. See you, Caleb. Have a good night. Thank you for coming out. Tell Poopa I said hi. Tell all the animation teachers I say hi to. The storyboarding, original story. So feature will have you to pitch an original storyboard, and then for storyboards on TV, they usually look for past work that you've done. If you don't have any past work, then whatever storyboard you've done for like school or on your own will suffice, right? But as soon as you have professional work to show, put that professional work in. Make sure the professional work is good, but put it in, because they care about the professional quality, right? Student work will always never quite be up to par what professionals need, because there are all these rules that people don't talk about in school, and they don't talk about in storyboarding and whatnot, and it's not until you start that you actually know. And that's kind of what the stream is for. I'm kind of giving you guys what I learned and telling you like, hey, you need to fix these, you need to watch over these. That's what I'm trying to teach. I'm trying to teach you all the professional stuff right now, so that when you start submitting work, it looks semi-professional, and so that people are like, oh, they actually are paying attention to things. They actually have some chops, right? That being said, if you're a student, they also know that you're a student. They're not going to judge you as like a professional quite yet. There'll be a little bit of leniency. Everyone started out at the same spot. No one ever just jumps to director all of a sudden. It's always, you have to work your way up. So there is a little bit of leniency. They will understand. And, submitting student work is not bad. It's what we have. So, all right. Have a good night, Alex. Yeah, that is that, I guess. Does anyone have any more questions? It's getting kind of late. 10:20. Otherwise, I'm gonna put on that terrible Monopoly mask again, and we're gonna call it a night. All right, I'm going to start switching over unless people have any questions. Oh,
you got creepy actually. All right. Mr. Monopoly back in the house. Oh yeah. Okay, let's look at some lunch lines. Let's see if I can find another spooky one. Oh, nice. What is it called when a witch brings you dinner? What is it called when a witch brings you dinner? Give up? Oh my god. Oh, that hurts so bad. Something like attacked me. They call it broom service. Get it? Broom service. Okay, guys.
thank you guys for coming out. As always, I really appreciate it. I hope it's fun and informative and not so much nightmare fueling. But you know, I think you guys are, just by doing this, one step ahead of everyone else. The fact that you're actually trying to improve and trying to take something away from this, I'm just hoping that that what I'm giving you is helping to some degree and that it's easy to take in. So yeah, I have no problem sharing this knowledge because I feel like the more everyone knows, the better everyone will get. And, you know, it just makes hopefully my job easier in the future if I'm ever working with people like yourselves. Because then we'll all be on the same page. We'll all know how to do things right. You know, and I don't think, you know, there's enough jobs for everyone, I believe. It's just right place, right time, just showing that you can do it. But yeah, I really do appreciate you guys coming out for this. And if you haven't already, hit that like button, subscribe. I hate that. You know, I really hate you know, if you like it, you like it. If you don't, whatever. Just subscribe if you want, subscribe if you don't. Just, you know, I don't know what I'm talking about now. Just thank you guys. I really do appreciate it. The YouTube thing is just separate because I think it's easier for people to find me on YouTube than Twitch. But yeah. Good night. Nightmare Sketches Monopoly. Slap that like button. That's good. Give the big thumbs up energy to that like button and get that thick subscription going. But yeah, I'll see you guys on Friday. I'll have another costume hopefully. And yeah, we'll have a good time then. You guys can ask animation questions as always. I'll try to think about who will be on. But yeah, come on by. All right, guys, have a good night. Thanks for coming out. Bye.